I'm Shelby Cardall with North Realty.
And I'm Stacy Moss.
And today we wanted to talk about once you are officially under contract on a home, what is the process that happens now? So the first thing we're going to talk about is once you go under contract, your earnest money is due. So you have 4 days from the time that the buyer and seller are signed on all the documents and it officially goes under contract to turn in your earnest money, typically to the buyer's agent's brokerage unless specified otherwise, and it has to be in by 5 p.m. on that 4th day.
Another thing is seller's disclosures. So the seller will go through their home and tell everything that they can remember since they've owned the home and disclose it, and that's something that is given to the buyer. There's a deadline that they need to get that to the buyer, and then the buyer goes through it and just initials each page and signs it, and that's just saying that they received it.
And then the very next thing that goes along with that is the due diligence period. So this is the time where you would conduct your professional home inspection. You would have a radon test if you wanted one. You could have a lead-based paint test if that was a concern. This is kind of your chance to find out everything there is to find out about the home and making sure that this is what you want to move forward with. Because at this point, your earnest money can still be refunded if you need to get out of the transaction for some reason.
And it's common to have changes at this point. So if you had anything that you were concerned about, you can ask to have the seller fix that or do something. It doesn't always mean that they will. They don't have to, but this is a time where there might be some more addendums that are going back and forth on any of the repairs or concerns that you as the buyer has.
And one big thing to remember on those addendums is that if the item is not addressed in a counteroffer, it's assumed that it's accepted. A lot of people miss out on that part, so make sure you know what you're countering and what you're accepting. So once you get a little farther along, once you're about a week or two out from closing, that's typically when your finance and appraisal deadlines fall. So this is when the appraiser submits in his report to the lender and when the lender submits for final underwriting to make sure that everything with the loan is going to go through.
Then we're at our final walkthrough. This is not to be done further out than 7 days prior to the settlement. So this is a time where you get to go in the house and see and make sure that if there was anything that was done by the seller, that it is the way that the buyer is wanting, and just go through and make sure the home is ready for you to purchase it.
And then we have settlement. A lot of people get settlement and closing confused, so I'm going to start out and discuss settlement. So settlement is when you actually go into the title company, you sit down at the table, and you sign the documents, okay? So once you have signed the documents and the lender is wiring in the funds, or if you're bringing in any funds to closing, that is now all happening at the title company. And a lot of people think the second they sign on those papers that they get to walk out with the keys, and you don't, okay? So settlement is step 1, and then Stacy's going to cover actual closing.
Closing is once the funds have actually been received, everything that needs to happen in the transaction as far as the buyer getting the money to the seller and the seller receiving it, and there's a lot on the back end as far as the banks and stuff. So I think of settlement and closing. Closing, you can't get into the home and close the door until you close. So that is the final step to getting the house. And that's a silly thing that I remember it by.
I know, it's a good way to remember it though, and that can happen up to 4 days after settlement occurs. So make sure that you're working with your agent to get that timeline worked out to where you can move and have your moving trucks ready and everything lined up to when you need to be. And then once all of that happens and you're officially recorded down at the county, you'll get that awesome phone call that we love to make to let you know that it's official, that you have bought the home, and you get to get the keys.
Yay!